glad today to have my friend Dallas Wayne on the phone with me. Dallas, I just tried to call you on the wrong number, and now I'm all scared because I've heard all these honky-tonk records about what you're supposed to do if you call the wrong number. I'm afraid I might get a mistress or something.
It's all that lonesome 77203 stuff, isn't it?
Oh, and Leroy Van Dyke. I mean, Leroy, in every song, he's either an auctioneer or he's cheating on somebody, one of the two.
I like to, if a woman answers, hang up the phone is what I like to call Walk On By Part 2.
There you go. The telecommunications version of Walk On By.
Hey, congratulations to Leroy Van Dyke, too. Missouri State Assembly just awarded him some kind of big deal because he has been in the music business for 60 years and still touring, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I understood that, first he was an auctioneer, too. I mean, he really was an auctioneer. And if you wanted to sell your cattle and have Leroy Van Dyke do it, he'd sure come to the farm for you.
Yeah, just another fast-talking fellow from the Show-Me State.
Well, tell me about your Taney County roots, speaking of that. Tell me about, you've got plenty of Texas connections and some other places, too, but you have some roots to good old Southwest Missouri.
Yeah, my family's been there for years and years and years in Branson and Reed Spring. They're one side of the family's from over, they're 12 miles away, and the other one is right in downtown Branson.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, the last of that generation just recently passed away with my mother, passed in the fall. But I still have some folks over there in Reed Springs throughout that whole area.
Dallas, when you and I first met, you had just recorded an album called Big Thinkin', and you were doing some recording with that Springfield bunch, and that was released on Bloodshot, right?
That was actually on High Tone.
Oh, on High Tone, okay.
Yeah, on High Tone. That was my introduction back into the United States of America. In fact, I recorded it while I was still living overseas, just in the process of moving back.
Okay. And that was when Robbie Fulks was getting a lot of notoriety, and of course you had played a lot with Robbie prior to that time and after that time as well. And tell me about what made you decide to come back over and start again on seeking the golden microphone.
I missed, the reason I moved back to the States is I missed drive-through dry cleaning more than anything. But we've been over there in Finland for 4 years living and another 3 years before that as far as just almost working exclusively in Scandinavia. And still living in Chicago those first 3 years. And it was time to come home. I still enjoy going back there when I can, and I still enjoy playing over there when I can. But, my wife and I had decided it was about time to come home.
Well, and you moved over there or were over there because your wife had a job with a cell phone, like a really nice position with a cell phone company in Finland. Was that right?
Well, actually, the impetus for moving over was going over there with Special Consensus, the band that Robbie and I were in, and I got a record deal offer back in 1988.
Okay.
And all I could think of then was cool, a free trip to Finland. We were there during the summertime. It was sunny. It was 70. It was beautiful. Everybody smoked cigarettes and drank coffee, and the coffee's great. The girls were pretty. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. And I thought, yeah, I'll come back here any chance I get. The problem is I went back to make the album in December, which is 23 hours of total darkness. And we went back there. And the thing that actually made the move happen was my kids from a previous marriage who had been living with us in Chicago, they decided they want to go back to Florida to live with their mother. I'd do something to piss them off, so they would go back and live with their mother. She'd do something to piss them off. They come live with me. This happened. And I asked my wife, I said, there's nothing holding us in Chicago anymore. I'm constantly on the road. Where do you want to live? And she said, same country as you. So how she landed the job over there. She came over there during one of the tours, and we were really getting close to making the decision to move. The logistics of it were just, they're overwhelming. When you move across town, they're bad enough, but when you move across the world, half the world, it's even weirder. And we were sitting around the hotel on a Sunday and attempting to read the Finnish Sunday paper. And we thought, well, let's get a look at property. Let's see how much it would cost to buy a house over here, and it's all a what if premise.
Sure.
And she stumbled upon a job in the classifieds for a marketing manager for a cell phone company.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I know it's Sunday, but I'm leaving on Monday, so I'm going to call and leave a message and check it out. She was familiar with the company and with their reputation. And she called, and the president of the company, who just happened to be in the office, decided to answer the phone that was halfway down the hallway.
Wow.
And he said, I'm flying back to Germany in the morning. She said, well, I'm flying back to the States tomorrow, too. And he said, can you come over today and talk? And I was kind of suspicious about this. I thought, what the hell? I'm going to take my wife to this, to this strange building and just let her go. With some guy who says he's the president of the company on a Sunday.
Right.
So I said, look, keep your phone on. I'll drive you over there. There was a rental car place right there in the hotel. We went down and rented a car and drove out to where this place was. And I stayed out in the parking lot while she went upstairs.
Uh-huh.
And an hour or so later, she came back down and said, well, that went really well. I thought, okay, cool. Interesting. You didn't get murdered. That's great. And she was flying back to the States the next day, and I got home about 2 weeks later, and one morning, about 5 in the morning, the phone rang, and it's this guy's secretary. Said, we're coming to Chicago. We want to interview you again.
Oh, wow.
How's next Thursday look? And so I was home and I was off the road. She went down and had a meeting with them, and she called me from down there at the McCormick place at the big convention center where they were in town doing this show. And she said, well, are you ready to move to Finland? And I said, why? She said, because I just accepted the job.
Well, there you go.
And I said, I'm leaving in 4 days for another tour over there. What are we going to do? And she said, I'll sell the house. They'll pay for the move. They'll pack everything up, put the house up for sale, and I'll meet you over there. Ha, ha, ha. Well, she did. We put the house on the market, and within about a week and a half, we had a buyer.
Wow.
And here we go. And we went over there. We had a wonderful time. It was great. It was just fun.
You had some big successes, the Finnish Johnny Cash or something. I mean, you had a lot of really popular records over there as well.
Well, roots music of any kind from America is real popular throughout Europe. And country at that point happened to kind of be the flavor of the month back then.
Uh-huh.
And I went over to make the record in December, and then we were going to have an album release tour in May because I was doing a play at the time, and I couldn't get out of that until May. And so I thought, well, I'll just go over and do this tour. It looks like plenty of dates on here. The money's good. This will work. When I got off the plane, I realized that we had a number 2 record in the country. And that was a little disturbing because we went from playing Finland's 5 country music bars to hockey arenas within that period of that tour.
Oh, wow.
And then you kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just took off. I was really fortunate.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a neat thing. How much touring do you do over there still now?
Not so much these days. About once every 2 years, I find myself getting over there, and it's usually just for a date or two. because the radio thing keeps me so busy on Sirius XM. I'm on the air 50 hours a week, so it's kind of hard to do an extended tour these days.
Well, so you really ended up getting a great connection, and you moved over to the other side of the microphone, I guess you could say, and tell me, what's it like being on Willie's Roadhouse and on the Outlaw Country Channel?
I've been fortunate to be with Sirius for going on 11 years. It'll be 11 years in July. And I watched this company grow from 200,000 subscribers to 28 million households at this point.
Wow.
And to watch that from this seat has been pretty incredible. There are markets for the type of music we play on Outlaw Country and on Willie's Roadhouse that are being ignored by terrestrial radio these days. And it astonishes us to look at the numbers of folks that do listen, because we're one of the few places they can get this stuff these days.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And so how does that make your job different as a DJ, going from what was kind of a very niche market to a much larger audience base? I mean, do you see that in terms of comments, phone calls, things like that? Is it different?
Well, there's an interesting thing that happens that still just blows me away, because the numbers we have are pretty healthy. But the beauty of it is, if you talk to somebody in Nebraska, for example, that listens to us, they think of us almost as their local radio station.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have taken the place of that. And they'll say stuff like, "Oh, you ought to do so-and-so on the show." And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is a nationwide broadcast right now. Worldwide, when you take in the internet portion of this, which is growing very rapidly, because that's how people are getting a lot of their satellite radio these days, is through smartphones or through the internet. And I find myself sometimes thinking to myself, you wouldn't ask CBS or NBC or ABC to do that. But they think they've taken such personal pride and ownership of this format that it's inspiring. Yeah. Well, and it seems, all of you guys do a good job of being very approachable. I mean, it doesn't seem, and maybe a little more colorful than they're used to, with people playing records on bigger formats. Do you think that has a part of it? Well, one of the great things that little Stephen Van Zandt, who is our guru for Outlaw Country, one of the things that little Stephen insisted on in the beginning was to not hire radio people, hire musicians to do these shows. Okay. And so that helps a lot. Elizabeth Cook, of course, is still touring full time. Steve Earle tours, obviously, still. Mojo Nixon doesn't tour as much as I think he should, but he's just pretty happy just hanging around in his underwear, so it's okay. Mojo was quite a colorful interview subject yesterday. I will have to tell you, that was I can only imagine. He's something else, I'll tell you that. He is a great radio mind. People sometimes fail because he is a rather, shall we say, bombastic and colorful personality. They forget what a good radio man he is. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, he knows how to do it, and boy, he just has something to say for every subject. He was really fun to talk to. You can talk to Mojo Nixon about anything. He knows what he's talking about. He's just not talking BS. He's really, really giving you. He's well read. He's a very thoughtful person, and it's an incredible package.
And he can sure use the word pecker a lot, I will tell you. He's right up with LBJ in his use of that word.
Yeah, he's a pistol.
Well, so Dallas, what's your favorite part of the two stations you deal with? What's your favorite part, or channels, I guess I should say?
I love what happens on Outlaw Country because we get to break new artists, we get to bring in music like that. But the thing that has become a big focus for me, honestly, is Willie's Roadhouse.
Okay.
Because this music, the classic country music and the classic country songwriting, to me, is America's poetry. And I never thought it got a fair shake as a valid piece of literature.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Willies, the Chris Christophersons, the Harlan Howards, the Hank Cochrans, those were our teachers. Bill Anderson, I put him in that category too.
Yeah.
Just brilliant songwriters, the very best at what they do. And the songs were sung by some of the greatest voices in the history of the music and played by some of the greatest musicians on the planet.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, and I think while, you know, shows back in the 70s like Hee Haw and, I don't know, Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, that kind of stuff, kind of portrayed country music as kind of a music for bumpkins. And hopefully now people can go back and listen to it and realize what an art form it truly is.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is I think, you know, Paul Henning and some of those people that were involved in those shows, I don't think that they meant for it to be treated like that because, you know, they brought some of the very best performers on there. But I think that at the time and the way that, you know, people just weren't used to looking at country records and thinking, boy, this is right up there with the grapes of wrath. But, you know, now you listen to Serving.
Yeah, Merle and Mickey Newberry and those kind of writers, you know, and Chris and Willie, they changed the game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt.
I was going through my show prep for the show this morning, and today was the day that Roy Clark made his debut on the Beverly Hillbillies as Cousin Roy.
Right.
Also one of the few times you got to see him cross-dress, too, because he played the sister as well.
Yes, I remember that.
Groundbreaking television there. Him and Milton Berle.
Well, not only that, but they had they had Flatt and Scruggs on there a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then obviously the Andy Griffith Show with the different versions of the Darlings and everything. There was some great music represented there.
There was, and I think the musicians had a lot to do with that because with for example, with the Dillards, they were so involved in the West Coast country music scene at the time that they were getting session calls. You know, they were playing on sessions with the Wrecking Crew guys.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they were just astonishing. I mean, that, and you know, there's just nothing better than the Darlings version of Dooley. That's right up there.
That'll bring a Missourian out of his coma. All you got to do is play the Dillards, playing Dooley, and he snaps right up.
There you go. Now, you know, along those same lines, I tell you one of the things, obviously, you know, I've known a lot about country music for many years. It's always been a passion and a hobby of mine, and I really love those records. But I will have to say that Willie's Roadhouse has really introduced me to the singing of Carl Ballou. You know, I mean, he's one that gets played quite regularly on there, that I knew him as a songwriter, but I didn't know what a great singer he was. Yeah,
perfect singer. There are a couple of bands like that we've kind of taken on as pet projects. One of them being Cliff Bruner and his Texas Wanderers, which I think was one of the greatest Western swing bands on the planet. Had Moon Mulligan in that band, and you know, it was just a great band.
Yeah.
And Bob Wills, of course, kind of overshadowed what they did, but
sure.
there wasn't any bigger band in the southeast Texas area than Cliff Bruner's Texas Longhorn.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, is that something that Jeremy Tepper does, or is that something all you guys do? I mean, how do you make those decisions about, well, I guess he wouldn't be involved with the Willie's Roadhouse, but how do you decide, we're going to try to play a little bit of this, introduce this?
Well, Jeremy actually is the program director of Willie's
okay.
Roadhouse. Well,
all right.
And I have become down here in Texas kind of his scout. If there's a new artist that sounds old, as we say, I will make sure he gets a copy of that record. And he's got a great ear. He's got a wonderful ear for not only the Outlaw stuff, but also for the classic country things as well.
Well, I mean, he's had a great. I mean, he's been great for many years in terms of what he's done with the compilations and everything else. I mean, he really knows his stuff.
He surely does. And that's one of the, going back to Outlaw country, that's one of the magical things he does is he, for example, my show will sound different than Elizabeth's show.
Sure.
Elizabeth's show will sound different than Mojo's show. So the day parts are different because he caters to our tastes.
Right.
And he knows there are artists that I don't particularly care for, and I won't see them very often, come up. But he also knows what I like, and he makes sure that there's a bunch of that available to me to play.
Well, yeah, you got to be evangelist too when you're on there. You got to be able to like what you're playing.
Oh yeah, you see, I know so many people in the radio business that have traveled from station to station and format to format, and you can tell they may change their air names as they go to different towns, but you can tell, by God, they just hate what they're doing right now. It just oozes out of the car speakers.
Well, so just so that everybody gets a sense of it, on both sides of the dial, who are some of the people that you really love to play?
On the Outlaw country side of things, I've always been a big fan of the Steel Drivers, which of course led me, of course, to Chris Stapleton as a pure vocalist. I think he's one of the most exciting singers I've ever heard. I have a great heterosexual man love for Jamie Johnson. I think he's probably one of the people that will save this music for years to come.
Yeah.
And I still stutter around Emmylou Harris. I can't stop it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She just turns me into a tongue-tied 14-year-old every time I hear her sing or talk to her in person.
Yeah, she's something else.
And, of course, on the Willie side, Willie.
Uh-huh.
Number one. Her Haggard right there with him.
Yeah.
We're so grateful to have these two still around and doing what they do. And they're still at the top of their game. The Django and Jimmy record last year went to number one.
Yeah.
And that's pretty impressive for guys that are, well, in Haggard's case, he's 78, I guess, and Willie's 82. That's pretty darn good.
Well, and I think that, the really funny thing is that you could take both of them back to their days in the 60s. And, when most people would consider, you're young, you're an artist and everything. But both of those guys are way better now than they were then.
I firmly maintain that Willie Nelson is 3 times the guitar player that he was.
Oh, I mean, his guitar playing
even as 15 years ago.
Oh, his guitar playing has just dramatically improved over the last few years. It's really amazing to see.
It just scares me to death.
But that's certainly not the blueprint that anyone would have kind of thought of when they're trying to plot out someone's career. I mean, it's not the idea of, deepening what you're doing and changing it. Maybe you think of that as a novelist, but not as a singer. And that kind of goes to your theory about these being the great literature of America.
Yeah, they're both still writing well. Merle's got an album in the can that is just great, and Willie Of course, he cranks out albums like, I don't know, Catholic Women Do Children. Who knows? But you can take that out if you want.
Oh, I don't know if I want to leave it in. I kind of like it.
But they're still performing at the top of their game.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's incredible to watch. And it's incredible to watch them together. And they are doing a swing to Missouri, by the way.
Yeah, they sure are. They're playing Springfield and St. Louis that I know of. And you know, you might be able to speak a little bit to this, but one of the one of the 2 or 3 greatest things that I ever saw musically was I got to sit in on the first date of the Merle Haggard tour and watch the sound check. And you want to talk about people playing because it was fun, and they did well over an hour. But just to be able to watch them do the stuff that they wanted to do, I mean, that's just incredible, isn't it?
Floyd Domino, who plays piano now in The Strangers, Floyd and I played together quite a bit down here in Austin. And Floyd told me just the other night, he said, I never get tired of the sound checks. He said, some of the older guys, yeah, sometimes they grumble a little bit because they got to get up out of the hotel room and go do it. But he said, you never know what's going to happen. There's always something magical that's pulled out, a song that you haven't heard in 30 years. Yeah. And everybody just has a ball. Yeah, and it's just so, I mean, the shows are just so different from time to time. Sometimes you may hear all the hits. Sometimes you may not even recognize some of the songs, but it's really a neat thing. Yeah, that's incredible. And you talk about artists that really flipped my switch. I have to put Ray Price in there as well.
Well,
I miss that man every day.
About Ray, because you developed a real close relationship with him, and tell me about that. He was quiet. He was dignified. He was a gentleman, but he was the most innately funny human being I've ever met in my life. It was so dry. And he'd give you that chuckle and kind of look over his glasses at you, and it's like, uh-oh. I think about him every day. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and a true gentleman, and a great old school entertainer. Yeah. It would be funny to watch him walk into a room and everybody just defers to him. Right. You know, even people that he could have walked into a feed store and it would have happened. Exactly. Not because he was Ray Price, but because he was who he was. Yeah. Well, you know, he was of that generation that, you know, Hank Thompson and he, you know, even lived with Hank Williams. I mean, that's connecting back to the master in a way that very few people can say that they were involved, you know. I Googled, you know, that Google search thing where you can actually Street View. Uh-huh. I tried to find that house on Wedgwood Avenue. I think it's a drugstore now. I was going to say. But I would move to Nashville and buy that house if I had the chance. Because if those walls could talk with those two being roommates for 6 months, especially at that time in their lives, it would have been worth having. Well, I've heard there was a lot of babysitting going on, and Ray would have been a kind of young babysitter for the baby he was asked to sit. But, you know, and then yeah, pretty much. You throw Hank Thompson in there and his Princeton days. He came to my house one time when he played Crane, but, you know, got to hear about, you know, Albert Einstein a little bit because he was at Princeton when Albert Einstein was there, and talking about some people that saw some things that just seem almost impossible to think about. Hank Thompson was an amazing man because he was so gentrified. People didn't realize that about him. It's sort of like Minnie Pearl, you know. She was Nashville society. Right. You know, Hank Thompson was a wine connoisseur. He sure was. You wanted to know what wine to drink, by golly, he knew, and he could tell you. Well, that's funny, and unfortunately, some of them are leaving us now. So, but tell me about what's coming up for you. Tell me about some of the dates you're playing, and tell me about this new album.
Well, I'm coming out of retirement more times than Brett Favre, it seems like, over the last 10 years or so. But about every time I think I want to just not do that as far as playing and singing anymore, you realize that it's an innate part of you, and you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And so we're putting together a new album now. Should be starting to mix this thing within the next week or two. We've got a country music cruise to do coming up. This is the time of year to go cruising.
Right.
And we've got one of those coming up in the Caribbean on the 31st of this month. So after that's done, we'll get back in the studio and finish this thing up, sprinkle some fairy dust on it, and try to get it out.
And you got some duets coming up on that. Tell me about those.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. This is out of almost, well, I guess 13 albums all told when you get down to it, but at least 10 that people may be able to pick up on eBay. This is the first all cover record I've ever done.
Okay.
And I looked upon it as something that's like, man, I haven't written anything in a while. What I'm have written, I'm not real happy with. I need to block out some time to do it, but I don't really have time. But I want to make a record. Oh, what the hell? I'll do a country cover record. And this has turned out to be the most satisfying recording experience of anything I've done in 40 years of playing.
Wow.
These songs, like I said, going back to it, these songs are just flawless. They're constructed well. They're fun to kind of put your own wrinkle on. And it's exciting to go in the studio with folks like Jeannie Seeley from the Opry, who is one of those other people one of those other gals that make me kind of stammer and turn into a 14-year-old. I've got a duet with her on the record, and I cut another song of hers that little Jimmy Dickens had recorded.
Okay.
That was, I thought, one of the finest pieces of lyric I'd ever seen. And called "She Always Got What She Wanted." It's just an incredibly well crafted tune. And then did a duet with Paula Nelson, who I spend a little time with on the radio these days. That's Willie's daughter, who is a great singer, and one with Willie as well.
Wow.
Which we decided to do a Fair Young recorded song that Chris Christopherson and Shel Silverstein wrote called "Your Time's Coming."
Oh, wow.
Just a great country song. And you talk about him wanting to play. When we were cutting the record, we'd already cut the basic tracks, and I brought him over there to the studio at Luck, Texas. And I noticed the trigger was sitting over in the corner, all set up and ready to go with the amp. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, this track's pretty full right now. What am I going to do if he wants to play guitar? You can't say no to having Willie Nelson play guitar on a duet.
No.
That signature sound is so cool. So I'm thinking all the time the session's recording, I'm thinking, okay, I can take away one of those fiddles. And I'm thinking all these things I can do. And he got done with listening to the track. And he said, "Oh, by the way, I brought along a guitar just in case." And he wanted to play, and he wanted to play through the whole thing, and it was a delight. It's a cool track. His guitar playing's on fire. He's singing great, and we just had fun with the tune.
Well, I think it must be I've got to give you a little trouble about this, because how can you look at Willie Nelson and tell him that you're retired? With him being 82 and still out on the road, how can you look at him at your spry and young age and tell him that you're retired with straight face?
I know. Well, I mentioned that one time to Ray Price. We were doing a gig together, and he said, "That was a good set." And I said, "Thank you very much." I said, "I don't do this much anymore, as you know. I'm kind of retired." And he said, "Bullshit." He said, "The only reason that a singer and songwriter retires is because his booking agent ain't worth a damn."
Well, there you go. You need to keep that in mind.
And, he had it. He was ready to go on stage anytime. And I've seen him go on stage when he was, receiving chemo treatments, 6 hours before.
Yeah.
I've seen him hooked up to, I saw Ray Price hooked up to medical machinery on his bus.
Wow.
40 minutes before a gig.
Yeah.
And he just took it all in stride. Yep, that's what I got to do. And he walked out on stage and just blew him away.
Yeah. And I remember seeing him a couple of times backstage on some of those tours that he and Merle and Willie used to do together, and never let you know that he was having any distress. If he didn't, he wanted to be out there and be playing the game and not pretending like he was hobbled either.
So that was the beautiful thing about that Last of the Breed tour.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Was those guys with each of them kick it up a notch because they didn't want to look bad in front of their friends.
That's right.
And it was the musical moments of that thing was some of the best. You get that still today with the Django and Jimmy tour, the Merle and Willie tour that's coming up.
Yeah.
You get those guys together, and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna do my best on this one because that last verse you just sang knocked my hat in the creek.
Well, one thing that I think, and I think it's just the nature of people not to think of it in this term, but I mean, we're looking at truly the last of the breed. I mean, when you look at what is now considered country music, and I use that term very lightly with some of this stuff, how can you even, I mean, they're not going to be another Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard. Those people, they're just not going to happen.
No, at least to our generation. Now, in theory, and this is sort of like the presidential election this year. You don't think any of this can actually happen. It's gotten crazy and crazy and crazier. And
yeah.
But the same with this music. The rational part of me says out there somewhere is an artist that will speak to their generation.
Yeah.
And do it with artistic credibility.
Right.
But the darker side of me, and the more pessimistic side of me says, hell, I don't see it. And number one, and number two, it's not set up that way anymore.
No.
Used to an artist would get signed by a label, and the label have like a 5 or 6 year plan to develop that artist and to find the right songs for them and that kind of thing. Nowadays, it's 2 albums and you're done. And
yeah.
I don't care if the first one went platinum. If the second one doesn't sell, you're out of there.
Right.
And you're back home at working the VFW in Virginia somewhere. Yeah. And you've got this huge nut to pay from all your advances and all the tour costs and everything for your 2-year run.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening unless the model changes, which it is changing, where record companies are a little less relevant than they used to be. But because of the delivery systems of how people actually get their music these days.
Yeah. Well, I think that, one of the things that I don't hear discussed as much, not only are we not finding Merle Haggards and Willie Nelsons, but we're also not finding Louis Tallies and, the people that knew the records and knew how to make them and heard something there, whether it's John Hammond or Happy Daly. We're not having those guys to find those records.
Well, there are a few great producers out there.
Yeah.
And I'd go the gamut from David Cobb to Buddy Cannon. Buddy's been doing the last, 6 or 7 Willie records. He was deeply involved with the Vern Gosdin stuff. Just got a great record on Merle that's in the can that's mighty good, and a new one on Alison Krauss that is going to knock everybody's hat in the creek.
Wow.
It is country, and it is good. And what he specializes in is giving these records breath. There's room in there to move. Some stuff is so heavily produced these days that, even it's a matter of physics more than anything. You can't fit anything more into the EQ spectrum.
Right.
But there are some people that are going back and making these records breathe like the old ones did, like the Owen Bradley records, for example, those kind of things. Those were brilliant, brilliant albums. And if you look on who played on it, hell, there ain't but 4 people on the record. Plus the artist. But you don't miss anything.
No.
And that goes also back to the quality of players as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you're helping to preserve what's there, and I guess in the same way you're helping to introduce stuff that is going to have to carry us on, and I guess we've had a couple of good year run with Jason Isbell and Chris Stapleton and some of those. I mean, with Sturgill Simpson. I mean,
there's a lot of those guys that excite me.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned the big 3 to me. They're bringing something fresh to the music, and they're doing it their way. They're not letting the record companies dictate it. They're not letting even terrestrial radio dictate it.
Yeah.
Well, the same way, you know.
I put Jamie Johnson in there too. That's a nice little force up there. That's guys that are really doing something.
And you've got people like Casey Musgraves and Leanne Womack on the female side that are just playing and singing great and writing great. I mean, my God, Casey Musgraves is one hell of a songwriter.
Well, and we know that Elizabeth Cook someday is going to come out and make that record that's just going to make everybody sit
now
back.
There's another one that's got a new record coming out that I hear some great things about. I haven't heard any of the tracks yet, but it's going to be another good one, I think.
Yeah. So we've got some people to rely on. I just don't want anybody to not take the chance to see to see Willie Nelson or Merle Haggard if they get the chance.
Put it on your bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it will
down the road.
It will truly change your life.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dallas, is there anything else do you have anything else you want to tell us about coming up, or any shows that need to be plugged?
No, gosh. No, I'm going to go back into retirement as soon as this record's released, and you won't hear from me for years at a time.
Well, I'm going to be there when you have to tell Willie that.
Yeah, I can't look him in the eye and tell him that because it's like, that just doesn't fly.
Well,
he's too good a poker player to have that to have any effect on him at all.
Well, Dallas, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time.
Dale, what a pleasure to talk to you. It's been too long since we've seen each other face to face.
Oh, I know. We got to get that done for sure. Well, thank you.
Mighty fine. Take care, Pard.
Hope you enjoyed my interview with Dallas Wayne today. Go to DaleWileyShow.net, throw some money, buy some books. Copyright 2016.